And as I mentioned to folks that arrived at the top, if you feel comfortable having your camera on, it's always something that I like to see. I like to see faces, but whatever feels comfortable to you. And all right, so I'm going to explain what we're doing today. We're joined by Smiley Poswolsky. I'm going to introduce you in just a moment, but so you know what's coming, we're going to have about a 30-minute conversation between myself and Smiley, and then we're going to do a deep work sprint. So you'll actually get a chance to make some progress on a project, and that'll be roughly 45 minutes. But as you know, in the Caveday community, we don't actually tell you exactly how long that sprint will be. But just to give you a taste of what the cave is like, and then we'll follow it up with a Q&A with Smiley. So you can ask questions during our conversation, but we'll get to them at the very end of this, and we'll end at 8:30 p.m. Eastern sharp. So let's dig in. My name is Molly. I'm a Caveday co-founder. I know that most of you are from the Caveday community, but if you're new to this world, we are a company dedicated to improving people's relationship to work. We host daily focus sessions for members around the world. All right, now let's get to the good part. I'm going to spotlight you, Smiley. And I think I can spotlight myself. You'd think I would know how to do this more quickly. There we go. Here we go. So Smiley Poswolsky. Smiley is an internationally renowned keynote speaker on engaging the multi-generational workplace and fostering belonging at work, a topic I love. He's the author of 3 books, Quarter Life Breakthrough. I have to show them. I have to pimp it out. The Breakthrough Speaker and Friendship in the Age of Loneliness. We're going to spend a lot of our time here on this book, but I wanted to just briefly touch on the Quarter Life Breakthrough. So I know you wrote this book like 8 years ago, and what's really like turned me on to you and your work, because I think so many people have a quarter life crisis or midlife crisis, but I love the reframe in breakthrough. And I had a quarter life breakthrough actually where I met you at Camp Grounded. Just a grown-up summer camp. We're not going to talk about that now. But I was hoping you could just briefly touch on this and why you wrote it and maybe what you got wrong in the book.
Sure. Well, first of all, Molly, thank you for having me. Thank you to the Caveday community. Thank you all for being here. I know it's a lot on a Tuesday evening to take time for another Zoom call. So I appreciate you all taking the time for yourself to do some deep work and to kind of learn from another creative, another author. Somebody else working on things that they truly care about. So I appreciate that. So I wrote Quarter Life Breakthrough. I self-published the original version in 2014. It then got picked up by Penguin. And it was really about my own quarter life crisis, my own kind of journey to find meaningful work, this sense of being stuck in a job that on paper other people thought was great and by all means was great, but wasn't internally really what I wanted. And I started kind of writing and researching a lot about how millennials and young people at the time, and frankly, still young people, are looking more for meaning and mission and purpose in their work. Yes, money, obviously, but also this kind of deeper desire to do something that really truly care about, not just that maybe other people care about, but actually kind of reflects their personal mission and purpose. So Quarter Life Breakthrough is about that. And, as I started kind of documenting my own journey in this regard, I realized that a lot of people were going through the same thing I was. My view on writing is that you kind of write the book that you wish you had. All of my books are kind of about, I wrote, each of them is about the resource, the tool that I wish I had when I was going through a period of challenge in a specific area of my life. And so Quarter Life Breakthrough is really about the challenge of career and work and life, and what does it all look like? And my message there being like, I was really trying to encourage people, both for myself and other people, to kind of not follow this linear path, which, I think now is pretty well accepted in 2022. But, even I think 6, 7, 8 years ago there was still this kind of push in a kind of traditional career landscape that you kind of find something and stick with it. And I was noticing that that's just not the case at all. And people are looking much more for work-life flexibility, having multiple jobs, trying different things, not sticking to one script, being kind of the slash generation is what we often call Gen Zers, right? You're a product manager / copywriter / DJ / artist. And and that's okay, and to embrace more of what I refer to as a lily pad career mindset, where you can kind of be hopping between different lily pads, and it's not one ladder, and that they're all kind of connected. Not to embrace job hopping necessarily, because that could be really detrimental, but also that it's going to have to be more nimble, more flexible, more agile, have a career more based in experimentation, which I think now is more widely accepted. I think the thing that I wish I kind of knew back then is, I was encouraging, I really kind of really was promoting this idea around purpose. The subtitle of the book is Invent Your Own Path, Find Meaningful Work, and Build a Life That Matters. I truly still believe in that subtitle. I do think that there's a little bit of, I don't know if any of you have been watching the various millennial scandal TV shows between The Dropout and We Crashed and Super Pumped, which is about Uber. There's a little bit of like that gone too far. I don't think my book is promoting this, but like this obsession with purpose, this obsession with hustle, this obsession even with meaningful work, even if well-intentioned, to change the world, actually can sometimes lead to perverse outcomes, especially maybe when it comes to just overwork in general, or over reliance on work as an identity. Work is important, but it's not all who you are. And I think that maybe my book a little bit, I wish if I could go back and change it a little bit, it would be like, purpose is important. By all means, you should have purpose in your work. You're way better doing something that you care about than selling something you don't believe in, or working for a company that doesn't share your values, or polluting the planet, or doing something evil, or just being apathetic in your job. Life is too short to be apathetic in your work, and work is not everything. Like, you have to have a life outside of work. You have to have friends. You have to have community. You have to have hobbies that maybe aren't at all about capital or money or business, and are just light you up inside, or you enjoy, or like you like to go cooking, you like to garden, you like to play with your dog, you like to do whatever, and that's a meaningful life, that's meaningful pursuit, and that's worth the precious time that we have, and to celebrate that. And I think that my message, I think for young people especially, people get so caught up in this quest for purpose that sometimes it leads to stress and anxiety, and you just kind of realize down the road that it's about the journey anyway. It's not really about the accomplishments or the LinkedIn bio or anything like that.
Yeah, something that we say at Caveday is we're improving the quality of your life by improving the quality of your work. Not saying like it's, we go spend your time well, so that you can go cook, so that you can garden, and
right,
also work. But it's not. Yes, I love that. Also, yeah. I'm eating up all of those shows.
Yeah, they're great. They're amazing shows, and they're amazing stories, and they're examples of like when purpose goes wrong a little bit,
right.
or
exactly.
when using the phrase change the world, or having incredible ambition. Ambition's great, but not when you are building a toxic culture or lying to people.
Right, precisely. So I wanted to move on to your most recent book. I love this, Friendship in the Age of Loneliness. And so this came out during the pandemic, but you wrote it before the pandemic. And there's an interesting little insert at the very beginning that touches on, this was written in 2019, I think, but came out during the pandemic. And I wonder, how has your relationship to this book changed, or to the topic changed, since you first were writing it?
Yeah, so I wrote the bulk of it prior to 2020. It came out in 2021. So I actually went back and actually rewrote a lot of it, because basically the whole purpose of the book was to talk about the loneliness epidemic and my own struggles with loneliness, and what I view as one of the major challenges facing not just the United States, but frankly, the world. Prior to the pandemic, I think, 2/3 of Americans were lonely. So that's prior to social distancing, prior to lockdown, prior to mask mandates, prior to people not being able to see most of their colleagues in the workplace for many months, if not over a year or 2 years. Loneliness was on the rise globally, and it still is. And trying to capture that, in my kind of recipe and really encouragement, was to really kind of reclaim in-person connection, reclaim the power of just spending more time with people in real life, right? We only spend 4% of our time with our friends. Meanwhile, we're spending 50 minutes a day on Facebook. For people that are Instagram users, 50 minutes a day on Instagram. For teenagers and young people, those numbers are even higher. For TikTok, for whatever it is, 8 to 12 hours a day on a screen, really pushing people to spend more time in person with the people they love most. Now that's great. And a lot of the prescriptions I was providing for people in terms of gatherings, in terms of in-person connection, weren't even legally allowed. They weren't safe from a public health standpoint, but they weren't actually even legal in many cases when the book came out, kind of at the height of at least Delta. So I went back and I kind of, that still is my message. And I still truly believe that, but also kind of the power of virtual connection. And the point being, it's connection in general. It doesn't necessarily have to be in person. It can be wherever. But I wrote this for a couple of reasons. One was kind of my own experience of loneliness. My nickname is Smiley. So consider myself a fairly positive, optimistic person. Social person. Prior to 2020, my kind of work life looked like going around and talking to a lot of people. I speak at events, I go to conferences. That's kind of my job, is to go meet people. And I'm experiencing this loneliness. I'm experiencing this kind of disconnect. So loneliness is the subjective gap between where your connections are and where you want them to be. It's that disconnect. Right? It's different than social isolation, which is more objective. Social isolation is just you're not around a lot of people. Right. Now, a lot of socially isolated people may not be lonely. They may enjoy it. They may like it. They may be introverts. They may like living in a cabin in the woods, not surrounded by lots of people. But some socially isolated people wish they had more connections as well, wish they were more around more people. So loneliness is that subjective feeling.
Got it.
Right? And I said, if I'm feeling this gap, then probably other people are too. I'm a pretty social person. I meet a lot of people, but there's something missing. There's a depth missing. There's a sense of vulnerability missing. There's a sense of, okay, friendships are not the same as fans or followers, right? Or connections on Facebook, on Instagram, as a like, as an emoji, as a like DM. That friendship is something that takes more time, and I'm missing that. And I felt, started to interview people and look at the research, and it turns out a lot of other people are too. 1 in 5 Americans have no close social connections right now. 0 friendships at its lowest rate in 30 years. The average American adult has only one real friend. 1 in 4 people don't have someone to turn to for a meaningful conversation, including a family member, which just breaks my heart. And loneliness is as dangerous to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So it literally is killing people. Close social connections increase your chance of survival, human survival, like life, by over 50%. So literally, I feel like we're not talking about this as much as we should be. Everyone says, oh yeah, connection's important, social connection, but not actually delivering on it. And kind of putting it at the forefront of our lives. I don't think we spend enough time talking about and intentionally structuring our lives to be built around friendship. We center them around many other things, but not as much around friendship, around deep connection. So that was kind of the mission of this book. And I really wanted to kind of create like a cookbook for friendship in the age of loneliness. I think of it as like, if you have a cookbook, or you look at New York Times Cooking or Bon Appetit or whatever your favorite chef, whoever your favorite chef is, like, some nights you pick it up, you're in the mood for pasta. Some nights you want salad. Some nights you want mushrooms. Some nights you want chicken. Some nights you're like, I don't even want anything from this cookbook. So you can kind of flip through it and pick a recipe, and then sometimes be like, so really that was the intention, was like, really infusing this book of rituals, kind of recipes for friendship that are practical, that people can kind of take with them, and on some days use some, and some days use others, and some just skip all entirely. That was really the intention of the book, kind of a practical toolkit for people to build friendship in their lives.
I love that. I almost thought of it as like a choose your own adventure. Like it's not, you can read it through, which I also did, and it's such a fun read. But I love the idea of it's looking at it as a cookbook. And I also really appreciate those statistics, because yes, this is a topic that we all know. We hear about it. People are lonely. We're spending too much time on devices. Yes, like we're being beaten over the head with that. But I love these statistics. I like to see data. So this really helps me like why this is really prevalent. And did you say that We only spend 4% of our time with friends. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, 4%. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh,
I know, it's awful.
wow. Okay. Well, whew, that's yeah, that's a shocking number. If you don't mind, I'd love to move on to, since we're our conversation is sort of truncated because of this focus session we're going to do. But I wanted to move on to sort of your expertise in workplace belonging. And because Caveday, Caveday is we're thinking a lot about how people work, and you're out there seeing trends. And I kind of wanted us to start on, aside from like this great resignation or great reset, however we want to frame it. And what other trends are you seeing in the workplace when it comes to belonging? Like going back to the office, hybrid, remote, like what are things that you're seeing or thinking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, great resignation, there's a good reason why it's called, people are calling out that term. So many people are thinking about leaving their jobs or have left their jobs, record numbers of people are quitting their jobs. I call it kind of the great disconnection. I think people are increasingly disconnected both from their jobs and from their colleagues, especially in the wake of the pandemic. I think there's been a lot of research that shows that remote work, hybrid work is more productive, that people enjoy it. People don't like to commute. People like having a little bit more time with their kids or with their partner, or just having more time to have a flexible schedule or do laundry while they're working or cook lunch or run errands or go to the post office. If you think about how ridiculous it is that most people in the course of their workday can't do anything that involves taking care of business, because between 9 and 5 is when you would go to the doctor, when you would go to the post office, when you would take your kids to the doctor, do anything involving kind of general society being open. And so that's research has shown that, and people are really missing the social connections from work, and virtual, while you can design for it, it's just not the same, right? I think, there's research that shows that, but I think you could talk to human beings that yes, a cool virtual happy hour is awesome and it's fun, and a team building session on Zoom is cool, and learning on Zoom is awesome. And it's not the same as just being in a room with a human being, making eye contact, seeing them, being with them. And we're wired, as humans for that. Not to say that that's for the right environment for everyone. But I think that, what I really see is that the silver lining from this, the shit show that has been the last 2 years, and the tragedy that has been the last 2 years, if there's a silver lining, it's that we're talking a lot about the things that were under the surface prior to 2020 that were huge issues then, but now at least they are out in the open. So whether it's kind of racial injustice in the workplace and bias and proximity bias, whether it's mental health challenges, whether it's finally realizing wait a second, the workplace is not sustainable for working parents, right? It took a pandemic for us to listen to the needs of working women. And that's ridiculous that it took a pandemic, but at least now, okay, we have to start paying attention to women. It took a pandemic. People have balance. Being a parent in the workplace is just not sustainable in the current environment, with the way that at least the United States takes care of childcare, or doesn't take care of childcare. So just some of these things that were bubbling, I think, are now being talked about more, and there's more of a bandwidth to talk about the emotional needs of employees. There's more space for that. You can define emotional needs in a variety, but I would just, in terms of work-life balance, burnout, mental health, people as holistic human beings, because there's less of a division. I think it used to be people, because you're in the office, it's that stuff's at home, I don't want to hear about it. That takes place there. When you're here, we're working. And it's people are this is my home. That's my dog. Those are my kids. That's the pile of laundry. Those are the dishes I got to clean up after this damn called meeting that shouldn't have been a meeting, right? My life is right here. So what are you talking about? So there's more of this hey, let's kind of cutting through, just acknowledging what people are going through, which I think is a silver lining. I think is a good thing. I think the trend there is good. I still believe that the kind of the challenge around connecting employees is one of the great challenges of kind of the future of work, especially as we move deeper and deeper into, technology is only becoming more and more a part of our lives. AI is only becoming more and more a part of our lives and how we work. There may be some advantages there depending on who you talk to. And there's certainly, as we move deeper and deeper into technology being part of our lives, I believe at least that human connection and kind of reclaiming the human becomes more important, and the human aspects of work, whether it's kind of soft skill, what people call soft skills, human skills, talking to people, communicating, creative thinking, strategy, understanding, listening, being a shoulder to talk to try on, to talk to, a mentor, a coach, those types of skills become ever more important, because you can't just automate everything, and you can't just, getting things done and being more productive is not actually what people are really lacking as much as connecting with other human beings, and having someone to be vulnerable with, and getting someone to connect with. So those are some of the things I think that are pretty important.
Are you seeing examples of teams that are educating their employees on soft skills?
A good question. I mean, I think Asana does a good job of this. I mean, they always they're a task management software company. They're based in the Bay Area. They kind of consistently get one of the best places to work, great place to work, best company culture. And I think they do a good job of they offer compassionate leadership training to everyone, mindfulness training. Everyone gets a coach, even if it's your first week, even if you're a young employee, you don't have to be an executive. So I think they do a good job of walking, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk when it comes to some of the learning and development work. And focusing on, the emotional skills, emotional fitness, as I think you also know Dr. Emily Onholt from Camp Grounded. She's amazing. She runs this organization called COA, which is trying to be a gym for mental fitness, and they offer a lot of resources and courses around emotional fitness and the importance of being an emotionally fit leader. And whether it's mindfulness, whether it's journaling, whether it's therapy, whether it's all of these tools that traditionally were thought of as having nothing to do with work or leadership, or things, realizing how important they are in actually the context of the workplace. So that, yeah. We
actually think of ourselves as a gym for your work. It's an analogy that works when we're trying to describe what is Caveday. Think of it as a group fitness class, but for your work.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I actually, you're not paying me to plug Caveday, but I will say this, I think that the more and more you talk to employees right now, people literally need Caveday in their workflow, in their work, everywhere, every day, literally globally. And I'll say this because it's the stats, but I think it's the average person is switching tasks every,
the average focus of a knowledge worker is 8 seconds.
8 seconds. I think it's 2 seconds for someone who's a teenager just graduating college. 8 seconds. And then there's the other thing. If you get distracted, which email surely will do, the average person is checking email or Slack or another messaging tool every 6 minutes. Average person checking 77 to 400 emails a day. It's not just the checking it for 20 seconds. It's that it derails the 8 seconds, the 10 seconds you check the email, the Slack notification, the Teams thing, that derails your brain for the next 20 minutes from actually doing your work, from actually focusing. So I talk to so many leaders now who say they have no time to get anything done because they have wall-to-wall Zoom meetings or Teams meetings. And it's yeah, you have to have these blocks where people can do deep work. Distraction is killing people. And these tools that, yes, may help us, or there is maybe a place for them. Obviously, Slack I've used Slack before. It helps you can help reduce the need for email, and it's adding to so much more distraction and people always being on and never turning off, and then being home and still working when they're supposed to be with their kids, or they're supposed to be reading or sleeping or just enjoying life. So this is a huge issue. I feel this, I think, again, the deep cultivating time and space for deep work, and that realizing that it requires sometimes space and facilitation is going to be vital in the kind of future of work, just because as humans, we're like, these technologies are too strong for us.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, well, you heard it here first. Yeah. I appreciate the plug. And ideally teams do this collectively together at the same time. It's not just one person coming. I don't think it really changes. It doesn't move the needle in an organization if one person is working by themselves in a deep focused way and everyone else is like, where are they? I need that person right now. Anyway, we don't need to talk on the benefits of Caveday.
No, yeah, but it's true.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a few before we go into our deep work sprint, just a couple of quick, they're not super rapid fire, but they're shorty. And so what's your biggest distraction, Smiley?
Definitely social media, hands down. Yeah. I was so good. I had like this, I was like off almost everything from like December, January, or to early, like a good 8 weeks, 9 weeks. It's like one of the best I've ever felt in a long time. I've gone off for social media sabbaticals. Almost every book I write, I go off for 2 or 3 months. I don't think without that, I would never get these books done. I just simply cannot. It's not just the focus. It's just like the comparison, then the getting just like, oh, that person already wrote it, or this book doesn't matter, that type of thing. So social media for me is not just a distraction, it's the emotional drain, it's the depression, it's like all of these like negative externalities that come with it. That is by far mine. Yeah. Yeah,
I was telling a friend that it's, we all know that it's the pull down casino, the slot machine. And yes, we know that like, what am I going to get? But for me, what I think is the biggest challenge for social media is that the emotions that you go through in the span of 5 seconds, you could be, you're seeing nonsense, like funny little GIFs and their memes, and then you're seeing war, and then you're seeing celebrity nonsense. Like you're going through this wave. And that, to me, that's like it's not the, what am I going to get? But the roller coaster is making me numb.
Yeah. And I think it's really hard as a creative. Like I totally own and admit the fact that I do not think I would be able to, I work for myself. I started my own business. I feel very privileged and fortunate to do that. I feel like I wouldn't have been able to get to the point of doing that without social media myself. There are people that can totally do that. And that was a big part of me just being able to build a small, I'm sure some of Caveday folks are familiar with kind of the 1,000 true fans, right? This idea, like you need 1,000 people that are excited about you and your work to kind of build a sustainable creative business. I mean, I don't know exactly what you need, but that's what some people say. And I think for me, getting to that 1,000 was being active and promoting myself. So I get that, but I also think it's not sustainable for a creative either to be on these platforms, and you really have to pick and choose. And my philosophy is what works for me, not for everyone. Everyone has to come up with their own kind of rules or guardrails. Is just kind of seasons. Like there are seasons where I'm actively promoting. I'm trying to sell books, or I'm trying to book a speaking gig, or trying to get the word out there about a new project. And then there's seasons where like I'm in the cave, the proverbial cave, or I'm just taking a break and I just need, I need that time off.
A couple questions, three questions, and then we'll get to our work. And who's influenced your work the most, and have you told them?
I don't know. That's a great question. I can't like the most. I mean, I'll name some.
Who's influenced
some folks. I'll say that Cal Newport for sure. Adam Grant, Priya Parker, a couple folks, couple faves. Yeah,
cool. Great.
Those folks come to mind.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of all three of them. What's a piece of content you've been recommending lately? A book or podcast? Show, movie?
Good question. Let's see. I mean, I love I love Ezra Klein's podcast. I listen to almost every single episode. I feel like there's very few smarter people than him. And he somehow has the range of like reading all of these books. A book that a book that's great for you all. And also someone that influences my work is Johann Hari, Stolen Focus. I just read. I don't know if anyone's read Johann Hari's new book. It's incredible. He's a researcher. He wrote a book about loneliness. He also wrote a book about addiction. He has a TED talk that's viral. That's kind of like the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. That's kind of like one of his famous lines.
Okay.
And his other book is called Lost Connections, which is also beautiful, which is about loneliness. But his new book is very, very relevant to you all. I think the subtitle is Why You Can't Focus Deeply and How to Gain Back Your Attention.
Well, Julie, I'm looking at you.
Stolen Focus.
Have that as our next book club.
Oh, it's incredible.
All right, my last question for you. Do you write with a pen or pencil?
I write with a Pilot G210 pen.
Very specific. I have my very specific pens. I only use, the
Micron.
Yeah.
Oh,
I used to be 005, now I'm 01. It's a big thing. And I'm going to leave a couple links here. You can find Smiley's work here. And if you want to follow Smiley on Instagram, you can do that here. And he's got great resources and good to follow along in his work. All right, Smiley, thank you for answering questions. We are going to transition now to this deep work sprint. This is a new thing that we're trying. I'm going to take you off spotlight for a moment. So this is new for this deep dive series, and I'm going to remove my own spotlight too, so I can see everybody. If you feel comfortable turning your camera on at this point, I'd love to see you, but always no pressure. And I know many of you are from the Caveday community, so you understand what's about to happen. But we're going to dive into a roughly 45-ish minute deep work sprint. So I'm hoping that you came with something to work on. What we usually do is go into a breakout room and share what it is we're working on. But because of time, we're gonna skip that part. But I'm gonna invite you to do one thing. So if you have your phone next to you, my phone is next to me, how dare I? And we're gonna move these out of sight. So take 30 seconds right now to stand up and actually put your phone in another room, out of sight. It's not enough to just have it right next to you. So we'll get started when I get back. I promise I'm getting rid of my phone. All right, and the last thing we're gonna do, I had you update your name to share where you are. So the next thing I'm going to do is have you share what you're working on in your name. And that'll be just a quick way for us to do what we do in the cave. And so it'll say Molly, Minneapolis, and then 1 or 2 words to define what you're working on. So mine is building permit. Here we go. So it's one extra level that helps hold us accountable to staying focused. And close your tabs that you don't need, close your email, close Slack if you don't need it. Hopefully, if it's evening where you are, you don't need to be on Slack. And we are about to get started, everybody. If you have questions, you can chat me directly. I'll pull you out when we're done with our sprint. And I hope you can stick around for some questions at the end with Smiley. So for now, let's go ahead and join me by rubbing your hands together. This is just our little starting ritual. We'll get started in our sprint with a big thunderclap. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. All right, everybody. Good luck. See you soon. There we go. Nothing to break your focus like that. And all right, everybody, how did it go? Any wins you want to share? If you want to share in the chat, how did it go before we get to the Q&A? Did you make any progress? I will start by saying that I have been putting off this project of figuring out how to get a building permit. It's just something I don't want to do, but I figured it out and it's not that hard. That's what happens in the cave. It's magical. Just do the hard work. And any other progress made that you want to share in the chat? Well, Smiley, I'm going to kick it over to you. How did your sprint go?
Good, good, good. I'm trying to write the storyboard for my speaking reel.
All right.
Which you'd think would be a very simple thing, but it actually is like very, like, I'm just like, here's the footage. I have a guy I'm working with who's editing it, but he's like, no, what's the storyboard? I was like, what do you mean? Just put it all together and make me look cool. Like, duh. And he's like, no, like, what's the story you want to tell? What's the script? And I'm like, what do you mean script? And he's like, we shot a little interview. He's like, and I need to get all the B-roll footage together. So it's this huge thing, and it's making me have a lot of appreciation for filmmakers. I actually studied film in college, interestingly enough.
Did you go from where, what percentage did you start at, and where did you get to in this 40-minute sprint?
I mean, I got a lot done. I don't know if I can tell you exactly because it's an ongoing,
Totally.
but I felt like I got a heavy lift done of just like, I have the opening script down, like the opening script in the like sequence of like the first 4 shots and like slides. So I'm off to the races. That's the biggest part. The opening of any speech or any video is the most important. So I feel like that's finalized, which is good.
Great. Congrats. I don't know if this is your first time in the cave, but I'm so glad that you could experience it with some of our.
It is the first time.
Awesome. Great. And Allison shares, reformatted a big talk I'm doing on Thursday and have been struggling all week to find the time to do this. Yes, Allison.
Awesome.
All right. So I just wanted to open it up and see if there are any questions from the group. And I know that there might be a couple. Julie says, Smiley, sounds like you'd benefit from a 3-sprint cave. Yes, exactly. A 3-hour block of time.
That's awesome.
Nice plugging, Julie.
I have a question when you're ready.
Go for it.
I'm curious. I don't even know if I have the words for the question, but this concept of like, your work is your family. We're like a family here. And, I'm curious what your opinion on that, from the like friendship and relationship side to I actually thought of it as you were talking about your first book. And I'm just curious what your opinion is on that setup in the workplace.
Yeah, great question. I think that's kind of like the element of like friendship, community, connection gone too far. I speak about workplace belonging. And on the one hand, like, you do generally want to create a culture where people feel like they belong, feel like they can be themselves, feel like they matter, feel like they have a voice, that they have psychological safety, that they're seen and heard. And yet you're not a family. Like, a family doesn't fire you. It's a workplace, Casper ter Kuile, who's I think probably a friend of yours, Molly, who wrote a great book called The Power of Ritual, has a great quote, like, how can we be in real community if I can fire you? And it's true. I think there's an element of this, that it's like the language gets kind of co-opted by, let's say, like the workplace. So on the one hand, I do think you want to create an environment where people feel welcome, like has some attributes of like what a family has in terms of like rituals, care, listening. At least a healthy family. Obviously not everyone's family is all rosy and sweet like that, but it's not a family. And I think using that word is a disservice. So I kind of, it's like there's a line to play in, right? It's similar with the purpose thing. It's like, generally purpose is something to strive for. And then there is kind of an element of going too far. It's like kind of playing in between these corners. I think that there is also like a little bit of, now there's the pushback so much against that they go fully the opposite direction, which is kind of like, for just lack of a better parallel, like anecdote, like the Basecamp. I don't know if you all are familiar with Basecamp, and they had this kind of whole thing of like, they're again a task management software company. We're not a family. We don't talk about politics. We're here to get our work done, and that's it. And that's, I think, also a little bit toxic and problematic, because it's like, well, like, how can you not talk about things that are impacting people's real lives, especially people that are marginalized or people that are experiencing oppression. like that seems like something that the modern workplace should be at least aware of and have a space to address and talk to. So it's like kind of playing in between these two extremes, or these two kind of like, I don't know, like rings in a, or lanes in a bowling alley or something like that. That would be my nuanced answer, but I think things like this require nuance.
Yeah. It seems like it is kind of a fine line. I think nuance is the right way to look at it. Like you can't wrap it up in a bow in that question, but I appreciate that answer.
Yeah, it's a great question, Julie.
Other questions, if you're welcome to throw them in the chat as well. If you want to come off of mute, I welcome you to do so. Or you can throw it in the chat.
Smiley, I had a question for you. I really loved your recent Harvard Business Review article. I'm curious to hear about that transition from self-publishing to working with Penguin. When does like Substack or Medium articles or your personal blog make sense? And when does trying to get published in a bigger outlet or bigger funnel make sense?
Yeah, great question. As with all of these things, I think there's no one way, no answer, no, what works for somebody when it comes to writing, when it comes to anything creative, I think might not work at all for somebody else. I think it really kind of, I feel a lot of overwhelm as a writer these days with like where to put the writing. And I think the biggest thing, just because, I, for example, have written some stuff for Fast Company. Now Fast Company has a paywall, like it's essentially worthless for me to publish there. I mean, it's cool that I'm published there. And I think that that's something that I wish if 5 years ago, if I didn't have, I would want, especially if you write for a business audience, that's important. And if the goal is to get people to be influenced by your writing, which is one of the goals probably for most writers, then having something behind a paywall that your friends can't even see, or that a lot of people aren't going to get to see because it's behind a paywall, doesn't help you that much. And maybe it'd be better just posting that on LinkedIn or posting it on Medium. So I think it really kind of is like, what are your goals? So for example, if you are trying to reach a kind of corporate audience for speaking or consulting, yes, shooting for the kind of Fast Companies, the Harvard Business Reviews of the world is very, very beneficial, because that can be a linchpin for kind of getting your work published elsewhere. But I think the first thing is kind of like developing your voice and finding the core audience for your writing. And the biggest mistake I think I made early on, that if I could go back, would be I would have less put everything everywhere and more just kind of been like, I'm going to pick one platform at least for a couple of years and just go all in on it. Now I think in the current context, that would be like a Substack or some sort of online newsletter type of platform. But I think I was a little bit more in the, I should just get published in so many different places. And I'm not sure that was great for me to capture really an audience early on. And then if I just focused on, we didn't have Substack back then, but building my newsletter, building kind of my core blog audience, that would have been a more useful use of my time. That didn't answer your question about the publishing. Sorry, Molly. Go ahead.
Keep going.
The publishing thing, I have a blog post I'll put in here about kind of like, should you self-publish your first book, that has a little bit more of the kind of nitty-gritty on this. But my thinking on publishing is that if you can get a book deal, you should get a book deal. Which is to say that, like, if that's something that's of interest to you, I think it's it helps your career in so many different ways in terms of whatever you're trying to do: speaking, consulting, coaching, just simply selling, building a business, building a product, getting hired or getting promoted somewhere, teaching or academic work. It can be so useful to so many different things. But not everyone can get a book deal because of platform or fame, or because of whatever the reasons that they don't get the book deal. And if that's the case, self-publishing is amazing. And it may even be more advantageous or more strategic than actually getting a book deal for certain folks. So that's kind of my like simple way of looking at that. And that usually first time authors, people that are just getting going until they have a platform, just don't have the option of getting the book deal anyway. So it's not even worth thinking about, just self-publish. And then amazing things could happen from that because you show that you've done the work, you prove it, you have a proof of concept, you have something to show people, you literally have a book that you can give to people. And that's what allowed me to kind of break into publishing. Now, for people that are more established, they kind of have the option. They could get the book deal or they could self-publish. I think of someone like a Seth Godin or, someone like that, or Tim Ferriss. If you have a huge platform, like you have millions of people that want to give you money anyway, or read your work anyway, you basically have the choice. So then that's a different kind of situation. But also, let me drop that article in the, let me just drop that in the here.
Yeah, that was a great question, Naveen. Thanks. I think we have time for one more question if anyone has one. And again, you're welcome to come off mute or throw it in the chat if that's more comfy.
I have a question. Smiley, you talked a little bit earlier about the importance of in real life experiences and connection, thinking about IRL versus a platform like this on Zoom. I'm curious if you have any data or thoughts on like Gen Z and maybe even younger, like their appetite for in real life experiences, having grown up in largely a digital world.
Yeah, it's a great point. The data I've seen, at least around Gen Z, is obviously smartphone generation, digital natives don't know a world without smartphones, but also we're seeing like the highest rates of loneliness ever that are in Gen Z. 80% of Gen Z are lonely. That's even more than millennials, which is 70%. And like what's even actually perhaps more alarming, especially for those of you that have kids or young children, skyrocketing rates of teen anxiety, depression, and even teen suicide among Gen Z, and especially correlated kind of with, use of kind of starting around 2008, 2010, kind of use of the iPhone and having social media at your beck and call. So that's kind of like, I'll post an article, like there's an article, Jean, I think her last name is spelled Twenge, is an academic that's done a lot of great research on Gen Z and kind of the impact of technology and smartphones. So the question is whether the appetite, I mean, that's a tough one because I feel like the appetite is so like, if you don't know, like if you've everything you've seen since if all your friends are using something, if the technology is built so that it's addicting, like TikTok's the most addicting thing ever. Of course, it's like the appetite's probably going to be stronger there than IRL. And I feel like when you start talking to young people, they like know that it's not healthy for them. They know that they want something more, and they can see it doesn't take much doesn't take many conversations to see how this is really affecting people, or you can just like watch the show Euphoria and get a sense of like what it's really doing to young people in terms of their mental health and their emotional well-being. But I'll post that in. I think I know Center for Humane Technology has some interesting research on that. I think they have a youth toolkit too, which is interesting. And has, I mean, also, yeah, all that data around like the Facebook files around the impact of Instagram on teenagers, especially teenage girls, in terms of their body image and all of that stuff. It's pretty alarming stuff. But yeah, in terms of the appetite, I think that's kind of like part of the job of us as creatives, and especially content creators, gatherers, is to kind of be like, no, this is awesome. Like this stuff, like VR and all that stuff can be great and might have a place somewhere. And like, just how good did you feel? Like how did the dopamine feel like when you were with somebody, or like, like it's not the same. Like, it's just not the same. So that's kind of, I think, our role as like community builders, as creatives, is to like show people that and make them feel that and make them remember that. I mean, that's how, Molly mentioned us meeting in Camp Grounded, summer camp for adults. Like things like that need to exist more. Things like Caveday, things where people are coming together so that people remember what really matters. Because I think the like attraction is always going to be deeper from a product that's like built to distract and built to kind of get you addicted.
Yeah, let's move that 4% to 5% time with friends.
Yeah, or 15%.
Yeah, Yes, true. Well, thanks so much for spending time with us today, Smiley. It was really a pleasure to speak with you and get some work done alongside you. And thank you to everyone for coming today. I know it's, carving another 90 minutes out for Zoom is always a challenge, but it was great to have you. And thank you for being here. See you all soon. At least.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.